Good morning, everyone. In the last class, we studied about the treatment of subscriptions in the income and expenditure account, and we also solved an example related to it. Now, let us look at another example related to the same topic. During the year ended 31st March 2020, subscriptions received were 10 lakh. These subscriptions include 15,000 for the year ended 31st March 2019, that is the previous year, and 20,000 for the year ending 31st March 2021, which is the next year. On 31st March 2020, subscriptions in arrear were 30,000. The corresponding amount of the previous year was 20,000. Determine the amount that should be credited to income and expenditure account for the year ended 31st March 2020. Now again we will prepare this table showing calculation of subscriptions for the current year. Now as we started in the previous question, subscription received during the year will be written at the top. Now we will identify the items which do not belong to the current year. Now in this case it is the 15,000 that we have received for the previous year, while 20,000 received for the next year. Both the items will be deducted from the subscription received during the year, as these do not belong to the current year. Then if we observe the next item, that is subscription in arrear. The subscription in arrear for the current year belongs to the current year, obviously. Now that needs to be added. Hence, the same amount will be calculated following the given calculation. Now as this amount is given to be 30,000, it also states that the subscription in arrear for the previous year is 20,000, which means that out of 20,000 we have received only 15,000. Now that we have received 15,000 out of the 20,000 amount, which means that there is still 5,000 arrears belonging to the previous year, which is included in this amount. Because it is stated on 31st March 2020, the subscription in arrears were 30,000. It does not say that it belongs to the current year. It says that as on this date, the subscriptions in arrear were 30,000, which means that subscription in arrear for the previous year is also included in this amount. Hence, in order to calculate the amount belonging to the current year which is not yet received, we will deduct this 5,000 rupees from the amount of subscription due as on this date, and hence we will calculate it as 25,000. The same will be added to the net result, and we will get the amount belonging to the current year which needs to be credited to income and expenditure account. In this case it is 9,90,000. Now after subscriptions, we studied about the cost of goods consumed during the year. The same was informed to be debited to income and expenditure account, it being an expense for the organization, which means that if a certain item which remains in the asset of the organization that is being consumed during the year, the same needs to be debited to income and expenditure account. Now we will solve a question relating to this in order to understand the calculation better. Now let us study the question. Calculate the amount of stationery to be debited to income and expenditure account for the year ended 31st March 2020. The opening and closing balances of stock of stationery are given. The creditors for stationery. Basically, creditors for stationery informs us about the amount due to the creditors by us, as we have purchased the stationery on credit from them. So the same is given for the opening and closing year. Stock of stationery is obviously an asset for us. It will be shown in the balance sheet on the asset side, while creditors for stationery, as we are supposed to pay the amount to the creditors in future, this means that it is our liability, hence needs to be shown as a liability in the balance sheet. Now the next information that is given is stationery purchased during the year is 3 lakh rupees. Now in this case, the purchases amount is already given to us, which means that creditors for stationery does not hold any importance to us in this particular question, because when we prepare creditors for stationery account, we get to know about the credit purchases of stationery. That already is being mentioned here, inclusive of cash purchases. Now that it is given in the question that the stationery purchased is 3 lakh rupees, creditors for stationery will not be involved in the calculation. Now, stationery consumed will be calculated using the formula opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock. It is based on the assumption that whatever stock we had in the beginning, also whatever we have purchased during the year, will be the total amount of stationery that we have minus the closing stock, which means that whatever is left with us, that needs to be separated from the total amount of stationery that we had, which means that whatever is the missing amount will be now what? The stationery consumed. So opening stock 80,000, closing stock 60,000, purchases as given is 3 lakh rupees. Stationery consumed during the year will be 3,20,000. Thus, this amount needs to be debited to income and expenditure account as a revenue expense. Now, had this question not have this particular line, instead of it said that the amount paid to the creditors were 3 lakh rupees, then the calculation would have been different. Now let's take a look at another example showing this different kind of calculation with respect to the same topic. Now this question says, show the treatment of the following in income and expenditure account for the year ended 31st March 2020 and balance sheet as at that date. Now stock of stationery is given, just like the previous question. Creditors for stationery is also given, again, just like the previous question. The additional information given is different now. During the year, creditors for stationery were paid 1 lakh rupees. Now in this question, we are not given the amount of purchases, but it is given that the creditors were paid 1 lakh rupees. Also another thing is given, stationery purchased in cash during the year was 20% of the total purchase of stationery. That means whatever is the amount of total purchases of stationery during the year, 1/5 of is belonging to the cash purchase category. Now, before we understand the calculation, let us draw the format. So the format would look like this. Income and expenditure account. Income will be shown on the credit side, expenditure will be shown on the debit side, income being credited while expenditure is being debited. For the year ended 31st March 2020, it is an extract because we will be preparing it based on the given information. Again, we will prepare the balance sheet format, liabilities on the left side of course and the assets on the right side. Now again, this is also an extract because it is again maintained using the given information only as at 31st March 2020. Now let us understand the calculation first. For this we require 3 working notes. First, showing the stock of stationery. Second, showing the creditors for stationery. Third, showing the calculation for cash purchases. So let's understand first and second working note first. Now stock of stationery, it being an asset account, will have a debit balance. So we will write to balance brought down, which will be opening stock, 80,000 rupees as given in the question. Then the balance carried down will be 60,000 as again given in the question. Alright. Now let's forward the balances of creditors for stationery also in the accounts. Creditors for stationery, it being a liability, will have a credit balance as opening balance. So by balance brought down 90,000 as given in the question. Then closing balance would be 1,10,000 to balance carry down 1,10,000. Now, if we see the additional information, it clearly says that during the year, creditors for stationery were paid 1 lakh rupees. This means that creditors were paid 1 lakh. So the journal entry would be creditors of stationery to bank account. Creditors liability being reduced and bank account, since it is getting reduced from us, so it also will be credited. So then if we post this in the ledger of creditors, it will go to the debit side of creditors and it will say to bank account 1 lakh rupees. Now if we settle this particular account, 1 lakh plus 1,10,000, it becomes 2,10,000. Here also 2,10,000. Now this there is a difference of 1,20,000 rupees. That needs to be filled with stock of stationery as credit purchase, because the account of creditors will be increased only when there are credit purchases. So by stock of stationery credit purchase 1,20,000 as balancing figure. The same needs to be transferred, of course, to the stock of stationery. Now look at the stock of stationery account. Now stock of stationery balances we have already forwarded. Now here we will write to creditors for stationery as given in working note number 2, 1,20,000. Right? Now we need to calculate the cash purchases before completing this particular area. Now let's calculate cash purchases. Total purchases let is X. Cash purchases as given in the question is 20% of X. See, 20% of total purchases. So it is 20% of X, X by 5. If we deduct 21s are 25s, so it will be X by 5. Credit purchases would be, now that total purchases are given, of course it comprises of only two components, cash and credit purchases. Here we are avoiding any kind of purchase returns because it is not mentioned in the question. So credit purchases would be X minus X by 5, hence 4X by 5. Now that we know that credit purchases are 1,20,000 rupees as calculated in the account. So 4x by 5 will be equal to 1,20,000. After solving, we find the value of X, 1,50,000, and X here is purchases, total purchases. So total purchases would be 1,50,000. Now cash purchases is 1/5 of X. So it will be 1 by 5 of 1,50,000, hence it would be 30,000. The same needs to be transferred to stock of stationery because this is the amount that we have spent on purchasing the stationery. The entry passed would be stock of stationery to bank. So in stock of stationery, it will be on the debit side to bank account, 30,000 rupees. Now, if we observe the items, except for this, we are done with all the items. So now we will close this particular account. On the debit, there is a total of 2,30,000. On the credit, it is only 60,000, which means that the amount of stock has been reduced by 1,70,000 rupees. And that, of course, is because of the stationery consumed. This needs to be charged from the income and expenditure account. So we will write by income and expenditure account, stationery consumed as balancing figure 1,70,000. Now we will plot all the information in the income and expenditure account and balance sheet. This particular amount will be debited to income and expenditure account. Hence it needs to go to income and expenditure account, debit side under the expenditure head to stationery consumed, working note number 1, which is this. So 1,70,000 we will write here, while the balances of stock of stationery and creditors for stationery for the closing date will be transferred to the balance sheet. So in balance sheet, stock of stationery being an asset will be shown on the asset side as 60,000 as given in the question, while creditors for stationery being a liability, again the closing balance will be written on the liability side 1,10,000. Thank you.